All right, try yourself now.
Evelyn Harris, billionaire CEO, froze at her son's bedroom door. Dylan, her 8-year-old boy who hadn't walked in 3 years, was standing, actually standing, his legs trembling but holding, and kneeling beside him, hands gently supporting his calves, was Jerry Campbell, her janitor. "You're doing amazing, buddy," Jerry whispered. One more step. Dylan's foot lifted, moved forward, touched the ground. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. Her son was walking. Her paralyzed son was walking. And her janitor had made it happen. But Jerry's secret was far deeper than physical therapy skills. Behind those calloused janitor hands was a past that would shatter everything Evelyn thought she knew about trust, sacrifice, and miracles. If you want to discover who this mysterious man really is and how he gave up everything to save a child who wasn't his own, subscribe and follow the next chapter, because one truth Jerry reveals tonight will change both their lives forever. 3 years earlier, Jerry Campbell had been living his dream. At 36, he was one of Seattle's most respected pediatric physical therapists, specializing in children with spinal cord injuries and neuromuscular disorders. His private practice, Campbell Pediatric Rehabilitation, had a waiting list 6 months long. Parents traveled from across the country to bring their children to him, desperate for the miracles he seemed to work with patience, expertise, and unwavering dedication. His office walls were covered with thank you cards and photos of children he'd helped, kids in wheelchairs who now ran marathons, toddlers who'd been told they'd never walk now climbing playground equipment, teenagers with cerebral palsy dancing at their proms. Each success story filled Jerry with profound satisfaction. He'd spent 12 years building his reputation, earning advanced certifications in pediatric neurological rehabilitation, attending conferences around the world, and publishing research papers that other therapists cited in their own work. But Jerry's greatest achievement was his own daughter Lily. At 6 years old, she had her father's sandy brown hair and her mother's bright green eyes that sparkled with mischief. Lily was healthy, vibrant, and endlessly curious about her father's work. She'd sit in his office after school, watching through the window as he worked with young patients, cheering silently when they made progress. "Daddy, why do you help kids walk?" she'd asked one evening during dinner, her legs swinging under her chair as she picked at her vegetables. "Because everyone deserves to move through the world freely, sweetheart. Some kids just need a little extra help to find their legs." "Oh, that's why you're a superhero," she'd declared matter-of-factly, pushing her peas around her plate. Jerry's wife, Monica, had laughed from across the table, her dark hair catching the kitchen light. "She's not wrong, you know. Those superheroes don't leave their capes on the bathroom floor." Jerry had grinned sheepishly. "I'm working on that." Monica was a pediatric nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital, where they'd met during Jerry's residency. She'd been the one who'd shown him the patience required to work with frightened children, the compassion needed to comfort worried parents, and the resilience necessary to handle the cases that didn't end happily. They'd been married 7 years, and had built what Jerry considered a perfect life, meaningful careers, a beautiful daughter, a cozy house in Queen Anne with a garden that Monica tended obsessively, and love that had only deepened with time. Their Saturday mornings were sacred. Jerry would make pancakes while Lily set the table with careful precision. Monica would read the newspaper aloud, commenting on everything from politics to celebrity gossip, while Jerry flipped pancakes into increasingly ridiculous shapes: dinosaurs, rockets, the Space Needle. Lily would rate each creation with the seriousness of a professional food critic. "This T-Rex gets an 8 out of 10, she'd announce. "The arms are too big." T-Rex arms are supposed to be small," Monica would remind her. "Exactly my point, Mom." Those mornings felt eternal, unbreakable. Jerry thought they'd have thousands more of them. Everything changed on a Tuesday in March. Jerry was working with a young patient named Marcus, a 7-year-old with cerebral palsy, who'd made incredible progress over the past year. They were working on balance exercises, Marcus standing on one foot while Jerry spotted him carefully. 3 more seconds, buddy. You've got this. Marcus's face was screwed up in concentration, his tongue sticking out slightly. I'm trying. You're doing it. Look at you, standing like a flamingo. Marcus giggled, wobbling slightly. Flamingos are pink, so wear a pink shirt next time. Jerry's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, keeping his hands ready to catch Marcus if he fell. The phone stopped, then immediately started buzzing again, then again. Hold on, Marcus. Great job. You can put your foot down. Jerry pulled out his phone. 5 missed calls from a number he didn't recognize. Before he could dial back, his receptionist, Sandra, knocked urgently on the therapy room door. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something Jerry had never seen there before. Fear. Jerry, it's Seattle Children's, she said, her voice trembling. There's been an incident. Monica. Jerry's world stopped. The phone slipped from his hand. Marcus said something, but Jerry couldn't hear it. His blood was rushing too loud in his ears. What happened? His voice sounded strange, distant. They wouldn't say, just that you need to come immediately. Jerry drove to the hospital in a blur, running every red light, his mind screaming possibilities he couldn't bear to imagine. Car accident? No, she'd already be at the hospital if she was hurt there. Fall? Heart attack? His thoughts spiraled into darker and darker territories. His sister had picked up Lily from school. He'd called her from the car, his voice cracking as he asked her to please take care of Lily for a few hours, maybe longer. He didn't know how long. The hospital was chaos when he arrived. Police cars in the parking lot, yellow tape, security guards everywhere. Jerry's heart hammered so hard he thought it might explode through his chest. A nurse he recognized, one of Monica's colleagues, found him in the emergency department lobby. Her name was Patricia, and she'd been at their wedding. "Jerry," she said, and the way her voice broke on his name told him everything and nothing at once. "She's in surgery." "What happened? Patricia, what happened?" Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "A patient's family member. The Henderson case, you remember? The little girl who died last month from leukemia. The father, he blamed Monica, said she should have caught the infection earlier. He was waiting in the parking garage. He had a knife." The world tilted sideways. Jerry grabbed the wall for support. "He stabbed her, Jerry, multiple times before security could get there. She's in surgery now. They're doing everything they can." The news was devastating, but the waiting was worse. Monica was in surgery for 11 hours. Jerry sat in the waiting room, Lily asleep in his arms. His sister had brought her after Patricia called to say it would be a long night. He prayed to every god he knew, and some he didn't. He bargained, pleaded, promised. He would give up his practice, his house, everything he owned, if only Monica would be okay. Other families cycled through the waiting room, some left with good news, their faces flooding with relief. Others left with red eyes and hollow expressions. Jerry watched them all, wondering which category he'd fall into. At 3:47 a.m. the surgeon emerged. Dr. Watkins was tall, with graying temples and tired eyes. Jerry had met him at hospital functions, a brilliant trauma surgeon with a reputation for performing miracles. Jerry stood carefully, trying not to wake Lily. She's alive," Dr. Watkins said, and Jerry nearly collapsed with relief. "But Jerry, I need to be honest with you. The damage was extensive. He punctured her lung, nicked her liver, and the knife severed her spinal cord at T12. We were able to repair the organ damage, but the spinal injury—" Jerry knew what that meant. He'd spent his entire career working with spinal cord injuries. T12, complete severance. "She won't walk again," Jerry said, his voice flat. Dr. Watkins shook his head slowly. "I'm sorry, Jerry. We did everything we could. Monica survived, but the attack had severed her spinal cord. She would never walk again. The nurse who spent her career helping children would spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. Jerry didn't care. She was alive. They would adapt. They would heal. They would rebuild. He'd spent years helping children with spinal injuries live full, meaningful lives. He could help his wife do the same, but Monica couldn't accept her new reality. The first weeks were understandable. Shock, grief, anger, all normal responses to trauma. Monica cried. She raged. She cursed the man who'd attacked her, who'd taken her mobility, her independence, her identity. Jerry held her through it all, his own grief pushed aside to make room for hers. But as weeks turned into months, Jerry watched his vibrant wife disappear into depression so deep and dark that he couldn't reach her. She refused physical therapy. The bitter irony of needing the very treatment Jerry provided to others wasn't lost on either of them. She'd been there for countless of his sessions, had seen the tears and triumphs, the setbacks and breakthroughs. Now she was supposed to be the patient, and the role didn't fit. "I can't do this," she'd say, when Jerry suggested they try a simple exercise. "Don't ask me to do this." "Monica, please, just 10 minutes. We can start slow." "You don't understand. You'll never understand." She pushed away Lily, claiming she didn't want their daughter to see her broken. When Lily would try to climb into her lap like she used to, Monica would stiffen, then find an excuse to send her away. "Mommy needs to rest, sweetie." But I just wanted to show you my drawing." "Later, Lily. Please." Later never came. She stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped existing in any meaningful way. She'd sit in her wheelchair by the window for hours, staring at nothing, her once bright eyes dull and lifeless. The garden she'd loved so much grew wild and tangled, and when Jerry offered to tend it, she'd snapped at him. "What's the point? I can't garden from a wheelchair." "Of course you can. We can build raised beds, get tools with extended handles." "Stop trying to fix everything, Jerry. Some things can't be fixed." Jerry tried everything. He modified their house for wheelchair accessibility, installing ramps, widening doorways, lowering countertops. He brought her to the best therapists, psychiatrists, and counselors money could buy. He arranged visits from friends, family, and colleagues who told her how much they loved her, how inspired they were by her strength. "What strength?" she'd ask after they left. "I can't even get out of bed by myself." He showed her videos of wheelchair athletes, basketball players, tennis champions, marathon runners, success stories of people living full, vibrant lives with spinal cord injuries, nurses who continued working, mothers who raised children, women who traveled the world. "Good for them," Monica would say flatly. "That's not me." Nothing worked. Monica had decided she wasn't worth saving. The worst part was how good she'd become at hiding it. She'd put on a brave face for visitors, smile for the therapists, tell everyone she was working on accepting her new life. But Jerry saw through it. He'd catch her staring at her legs with such hatred, such disgust, that it made him physically ill. 6 months after the attack, on a rainy Seattle morning that matched the grayness inside their house, Jerry woke to find Monica's side of the bed empty. Not unusual. She often had trouble sleeping and would read in the living room. But something felt wrong. The air in the house was too still, too quiet. Jerry found Monica's wheelchair empty beside their bed. The bathroom door was locked. He'd called her name, softly at first, then louder. No response. He broke down the door with his shoulder, the wood splintering under his weight. He was too late. Monica had taken her own life. Jerry fell apart completely. The grief was all-consuming, a black hole that swallowed everything. His joy, his purpose, his will to continue. He couldn't work. The thought of helping other children walk when he couldn't save his own wife seemed unbearably cruel. How could he teach children to believe in themselves when he'd failed to make Monica believe in herself? He closed his practice, refunded his patients, sent apologetic letters to families who'd been waiting months for appointments. Some wrote back, expressing condolences, understanding. Others were angry, desperate. Their children needed him, but Jerry had nothing left to give. He retreated into the bottle. Whiskey became his morning coffee, his afternoon tea, his evening companion. The numbness it provided was preferable to the crushing weight of guilt and grief. Lily was the only thing that kept him alive. His daughter needed him. At 6 years old, she'd lost her mother and was watching her father dissolve before her eyes. She'd stopped asking for pancakes on Saturday mornings. She'd stopped rating his cooking. She'd stopped drawing pictures of their family because every picture she drew now had a piece missing. Some nights, when Jerry couldn't stop crying, couldn't stop seeing Monica's body in that bathroom, Lily would climb into his lap and pat his face with her small hands. "It's okay, Daddy. Mommy's not hurting anymore. She's walking in heaven." Those words would break Jerry's heart and heal it simultaneously. His 6-year-old daughter trying to comfort him with the only logic that made sense to her innocent mind. Mommy couldn't walk here, but in heaven she could run and jump and dance. "You're right, sweetheart," Jerry would whisper, hugging her tight. "She's walking in heaven. Can we make pancakes tomorrow?" Lily would ask. "Mommy liked your pancakes." And Jerry would pull himself together for another day, because this little girl needed him to be her father, her rock, her remaining parent. He couldn't fall apart completely. Not yet. He sold their house, couldn't bear the memories. Every room held a ghost. The kitchen where they'd made pancakes, the garden Monica had loved, the bathroom where he'd found her, the modified doorways and ramps that served as constant reminders of her refusal to adapt. They moved to Los Angeles, where his sister lived and could help with Lily. He needed a fresh start, a place without ghosts. Los Angeles was sun and palm trees and people who didn't know his story, didn't look at him with pity, didn't whisper, "That's the therapist whose wife killed herself." But Los Angeles was expensive, and Jerry's savings were depleted from Monica's medical bills, the house modifications, his months of not working, and the bottles of whiskey he'd emptied trying to forget. His physical therapy license would take time to transfer to California, and honestly, he wasn't sure he could practice again. The thought of touching a child's legs, of helping them take steps their mothers would never take, made him physically ill. Every successful case would be a reminder of his failure with Monica. So Jerry Campbell, once renowned pediatric physical therapist, took the only job he could get, janitor at Harris Technologies, a billion-dollar tech company headquartered in downtown Los Angeles. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd gone from healing children to mopping floors, from being called a superhero to being invisible, from making 6 figures helping kids find their legs to making minimum wage cleaning bathrooms. But it paid enough for a small apartment, Lily's school supplies, and food on the table. The health insurance was decent, important for a single father, and Jerry didn't have to touch anyone's legs ever again. He thought he could hide from his past, from his pain, from his purpose. He thought he could become invisible, just another face in a blue uniform pushing a mop down endless corporate hallways. He was wrong. Evelyn Harris, 38, was a force of nature contained in human form. CEO of Harris Technologies since she was 32, she'd taken her late father's struggling software company and transformed it into a $2 billion empire specializing in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Her reputation in Silicon Beach was legendary, brilliant, ruthless, and utterly devoted to success. With her sharp green eyes, auburn hair always pulled back in an immaculate chignon that never had a strand out of place, and tailored designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, Evelyn commanded respect the moment she entered any room. She was beautiful in a severe, intimidating way, the kind of beauty that made people want to impress her rather than approach her. Her heels clicked on marble floors like a metronome, announcing her presence before she even appeared. She'd built Harris Technologies from her father's ashes. When he died of a heart attack at 58, the company had been struggling, outdated technology, dwindling clients, and debts that would have overwhelmed most people. Evelyn had been 32, working as a project manager at a competitor. She'd come home for the funeral, seen the books, and made a decision that would define her life. She'd taken over, liquidated assets, brought in new talent, pivoted the company's focus from general IT services to artificial intelligence. It was a risk. AI was still emerging, and many thought it was a bubble that would burst. But Evelyn had seen the future. and she'd bet everything on it. The gamble paid off spectacularly. Within 6 years, Harris Technologies was worth billions, with contracts from Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and tech giants. Evelyn had been featured on magazine covers, given TED Talks, and been named one of the most influential women in technology. But success came at a price. She'd married Eugene Hughes when she was 26, a charming investment banker with family money and society connections. He'd seemed perfect on paper, handsome, successful, from the right background. He'd courted her with expensive dinners, weekend trips to Napa, and promises of a partnership built on mutual respect and ambition. What Evelyn didn't know was that Eugene's charm was a mask, hiding a controlling, manipulative nature that would only worsen after their wedding. He'd supported her career as long as she was subordinate, a project manager, someone with potential but not power. When she became CEO, when her success began to eclipse his support turned to resentment. "You're never home," he'd complain, though he often worked late himself. "The company needs me," she'd reply. "I need you. Doesn't that matter?" But his need wasn't about partnership. It was about control. He needed her home so he could monitor her, question her decisions, undermine her confidence. Their son, Dylan, was born when Evelyn was 30. The pregnancy had been difficult. High blood pressure, gestational diabetes, and complications that kept Evelyn on bed rest for the final month. Eugene had used it as proof that she was pushing herself too hard, that she should step back from the company. "Your body is telling you something," he'd said. "Maybe it's time to slow down." "I'm pregnant, not dying," Evelyn had snapped. "Women have been having babies and running empires for centuries." The delivery was complicated. Emergency C-section when Dylan's heart rate dropped. But Dylan entered the world healthy and perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair, and lungs that announced his arrival with impressive volume. Those first years were happy, or so Evelyn thought. Dylan was a bright, curious child who loved books and animals, and asking why about everything. Eugene seemed to accept his role as father, though he travelled frequently for work and was rarely home for bedtime stories. At age 5, Dylan began experiencing weakness in his legs. At first, Evelyn thought he was just tired. He'd been sick with a cold, and maybe he hadn't fully recovered, but the weakness persisted. The doctors thought it was a growth issue. Then they suspected a vitamin deficiency. Blood tests, X-rays, MRIs. Dylan was poked and prodded and scanned while Evelyn and Eugene waited in sterile hospital rooms, pretending everything would be fine. Finally, after months of tests and specialist visits, came the devastating diagnosis: transverse myelitis, an inflammatory condition that had damaged Dylan's spinal cord. The inflammation had likely been triggered by his cold, a rare but documented complication where the body's immune system attacks its own nervous tissue. The prognosis was grim. Dylan would likely never walk normally again. He might never walk at all. Evelyn remembered every detail of that moment. The neurologist's office, with its anatomical charts and medical textbooks. Dylan sitting in her lap, too young to understand the gravity of the conversation. Eugene beside her, his face pale and tight. Eugene's reaction was immediate and horrifying. "I didn't sign up for a cripple," he'd said coldly when they received the diagnosis. His voice was flat, emotionless, as if he were discussing a failed business venture rather than their son's future. Evelyn had stared at him, unable to process that those words had come from her son's father. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. Fix him or I'm done with this." It was the beginning of the end of their marriage, and the beginning of Dylan's psychological trauma. Eugene abandoned them both when Dylan was 6, filing for divorce and moving to New York with his assistant, a 24-year-old named Jessica, who made him feel powerful again. He'd wanted nothing to do with custody, claiming a defective child wasn't worth his time. His lawyers had drawn up papers relinquishing his parental rights entirely. "I'll pay child support," he'd said when Evelyn confronted him, "but I'm not going to pretend to be father of the year to a kid who can't even walk." Evelyn had been relieved to see him go, relieved to be free of his manipulation, his control, his cruelty. But Dylan had been devastated. "Why doesn't Daddy love me anymore?" he'd asked, tears streaming down his face. At 6 years old, he understood that his father was leaving, and his child's mind had connected the dots in the most painful way possible. "He does love you, sweetheart," Evelyn had lied, holding him tight. "He just can't show it right now." But Dylan knew the truth. His father had abandoned him because he couldn't walk. His legs didn't work right, so his daddy didn't want him anymore. The trauma compounded his physical condition. Dylan, once a bright, curious child who asked questions about everything, withdrew completely. He stopped trying in physical therapy. Why should he work to walk when walking wouldn't bring his father back? He stopped engaging with other children at school. They could run and play, and he couldn't. He stopped believing he was worth anything. "Why should I learn to walk?" he'd ask his mother, his green eyes, so like hers, dull and lifeless. "No one wants a broken kid anyway." "I want you," Evelyn would say desperately. "I love you exactly as you are." But Dylan would just look away, unconvinced. Evelyn threw herself into finding solutions with the same intensity she'd brought to saving her father's company. She hired the best physical therapists money could buy, internationally renowned specialists who charged $5,000 per session and came with glowing recommendations. She purchased cutting-edge equipment and therapy devices, robotic exoskeletons, electrical stimulation machines, virtual reality rehabilitation systems. She consulted with neurologists, orthopedic surgeons, and alternative medicine practitioners, anyone who might have an answer. Nothing worked, not because the treatments were ineffective, but because Dylan had given up. He wouldn't try, wouldn't cooperate, wouldn't believe. The therapists would come with their exercises and their encouragement, and Dylan would refuse to participate. He'd sit in his wheelchair, arms crossed, face blank, and wait for them to leave. Some got frustrated, some got stern, some tried bribery. None of it mattered. Dylan had built walls around himself so high that no amount of money could scale them, and Evelyn, despite all her billions, all her power, all her influence, couldn't fix her broken son. She could buy companies, negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts, influence government policy, but she couldn't make her child believe he was worthy of love. The helplessness was destroying her. She buried herself in work, spending 16-hour days at Harris Technologies, growing the company to ever greater heights while her son sat in his wheelchair at home. Dylan was cared for by nannies who changed every few months because his depression was too much to bear. They'd arrive optimistic, determined to connect with this sad little boy. They'd leave exhausted, defeated by his silence and his pain. Evelyn told herself she was working so hard to provide for Dylan's future, to pay for treatments, to ensure his financial security. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was hiding from her own failure as a mother. Every hour at the office was an hour she didn't have to face her son's empty eyes, his refusal to engage, her inability to help him. She was at the office the day her son stopped speaking altogether. "Mrs. Harris," the nanny had called, panic in her voice. "Dylan won't talk, not a single word. He just stares at the wall. I've tried everything, his favorite shows, his books, even ice cream. Nothing." Evelyn had hired a child psychologist immediately, Dr. Chen, one of the best in Los Angeles. After extensive evaluation, the diagnosis came: selective mutism brought on by severe depression and abandonment trauma. Her 8-year-old son had given up on life entirely, and Evelyn didn't know how to save him. She started bringing Dylan to the office with her on weekends, unable to leave him alone with nannies who couldn't reach him. He'd sit by the window in her corner office, staring at the Los Angeles skyline, not speaking, not engaging, just existing. Evelyn would work at her desk, glancing at him every few minutes, her heart breaking a little more each time she saw his defeated posture, his empty expression. "Dylan, sweetie, do you want anything? Lunch? A game?" No response. not even a shake of his head. She was losing her son, and all her billions couldn't buy him back. Jerry had been working at Harris Technologies for 3 months when he first noticed the boy. It was a Saturday morning, and Jerry had come in to finish some deep cleaning the regular weekday staff hadn't completed. His supervisor had asked if he'd mind working the weekend. Overtime pay, quiet building, easy work. Jerry had said yes. Lily was spending the day with his sister, and Jerry didn't want to be alone in their small apartment with his thoughts. The executive floor was mostly empty, but Evelyn Harris's office light was on. Jerry had learned to avoid the CEO. She was known for her sharp tongue and perfectionist standards. The cleaning staff had stories about her, how she'd once fired someone for leaving a coffee ring on her desk, how she'd reduced a manager to tears for a typo in a presentation. Jerry had no desire to attract her attention. As he quietly cleaned the hallway outside her office, he heard something that made him stop. The sound of a child. Not laughter or playing, just a small cough, barely audible. Curious, Jerry peered through the partially open door. Inside the massive corner office, a young boy sat in a wheelchair by the window, staring out at the Los Angeles skyline. He was thin, too thin for a child his age, with dark hair that needed cutting and green eyes that matched the CEO's. His posture was defeated, slumped, the posture of someone who had stopped caring about holding themselves upright. Jerry recognized that posture. He'd seen it in his rehabilitation clinic, in children who'd given up hope. But those children had been in treatment, surrounded by support. This boy looked utterly alone, even with his mother in the same room. Evelyn was at her desk, typing furiously on her computer. She wore yoga pants and a casual top, weekend attire, but still managed to look formidable. Occasionally, she'd glance at her son with an expression of pained helplessness that Jerry recognized intimately. He'd worn that same expression watching Monica disappear into her depression. "Dylan, sweetie, do you want to watch something on the iPad?" Evelyn asked, her voice softer than Jerry would have expected from the CEO with the sharp reputation. No response. The boy didn't even acknowledge she'd spoken, didn't turn his head, didn't blink, didn't move. Evelyn's face crumpled slightly before she composed herself and returned to her computer. Jerry's heart clenched. As a former pediatric physical therapist, he immediately recognized the signs, the muscle atrophy in the legs, not from paralysis, but from disuse, the way the boy held his body, the psychological withdrawal manifesting physically in hunched shoulders and downcast eyes. It wasn't just that this child couldn't walk. This child had decided he didn't deserve to walk. Jerry should have walked away, should have finished his cleaning and forgotten what he'd seen, should have reminded himself that he wasn't a therapist anymore, that he couldn't help anyone, that touching a child's legs again would destroy him. But Jerry Campbell had spent his entire career helping children find their legs. And despite everything, despite Monica's death, despite his grief, despite his fear, that calling was hardwired into his soul. He'd tried to bury it under janitor uniforms and mop buckets, but it was still there, pulsing beneath the surface. He couldn't walk away from a child in pain, even if it might break him. So Jerry made a decision that would change everything. The next Saturday, Jerry came in again. He'd volunteered for the overtime shift, told his supervisor he needed the money. And he did need the money, single father in Los Angeles. But that wasn't why he was there. Dylan was there, staring out the window, silent and unreachable. Evelyn worked at her desk, occasionally trying to engage her son and failing. The scene was exactly the same as the week before, as if no time had passed, as if nothing had changed. Jerry cleaned the hallway, watching through the crack in the door. He noted how Evelyn would look at Dylan every few minutes, her expression shifting from hope to disappointment to despair. He noted how Dylan never moved except to breathe. The next Saturday, Jerry came again, and the next. Each time Dylan was there, staring out the window. Each time Evelyn tried and failed to reach him. Each time Jerry's heart broke a little more for both of them. On the fourth Saturday, Jerry made his move. He accidentally left his cleaning cart outside Evelyn's office and knocked on the door. His heart was hammering. He had no plan, really, just an instinct, the same instinct that had guided him through thousands of therapy sessions. Follow the child's lead, build trust slowly, don't push. Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Harris, just need to clean the windows. He kept his voice casual, professional, just the janitor doing his job. Evelyn barely looked up from her computer. Fine, be quick. Jerry entered, pulling out his window cleaning supplies. The office was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Los Angeles, expensive furniture, artwork that probably cost more than Jerry's annual salary. But Jerry's attention was on the boy in the wheelchair. He positioned himself near Dylan as he worked on the windows, spraying and wiping in slow, methodical strokes. "Hey, buddy," he said softly to the boy. "Great view from here, huh? You can see all the way to the ocean." Dylan didn't respond, didn't even look at him. Jerry didn't give up. He'd worked with nonverbal children before, children so traumatized they'd stopped speaking entirely. The key was patience, consistency, showing up without expectation. "When I was your age, I used to think if I could see far enough, I could see all the way to tomorrow. Silly, right?" He laughed at himself. "I'd climb the tallest tree in my neighborhood and just look and look, trying to see what the next day would bring." Still nothing from Dylan. But Jerry noticed the slightest shift in the boy's body. His head tilted microscopically toward Jerry's voice. He was listening, even if he wasn't responding. "I'm Jerry, by the way. I clean the floors here." "What's your name?" Silence. Expected. "That's okay. You don't have to tell me. I'll just call you Captain. Captain of the window ship, sailing through the sky." Jerry gestured at the window as if it were the bridge of a ship. The tiniest flicker in Dylan's eyes. Interest, maybe, or curiosity. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but Jerry had seen it. It was enough. It was a start. Over the following weeks, Jerry made it a point to be cleaning near Evelyn's office every Saturday. He'd bring his cart, his supplies, and his stories. He'd talk to Dylan, never expecting responses, never pushing, just sharing random facts about the world, telling silly stories, describing what he saw out the window. "Look, Captain, there's a hawk circling. Did you know hawks can see 8 times better than humans? They can spot a mouse from a mile away. Imagine having eyes that powerful." Jerry would watch Dylan for any sign of interest, any micro-expression that showed engagement. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, those signs appeared. Dylan would listen, his body gradually orienting toward Jerry's voice. His head would turn slightly when Jerry entered the room. His breathing would change, becoming less shallow. Jerry never pushed, never asked Dylan to respond, never made him feel pressured or examined. He just showed up, talked, and left. Evelyn noticed. "You don't have to talk to him," she said one day, her voice tight with something Jerry couldn't identify. Embarrassment, gratitude, desperation. "He doesn't respond." "I know," Jerry replied simply. "But everyone deserves to hear a friendly voice, even if they can't answer back." Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, her sharp green eyes searching his face for something. Whatever she saw made something soften in her expression. She nodded once curtly and returned to her work. But Jerry noticed she stopped typing when he talked to Dylan. She was listening too. The breakthrough came on the 6th Saturday. Jerry was telling Dylan about sea turtles. It was one of Lily's favorite topics. She'd become obsessed after watching a documentary about ocean life. "Did you know sea turtles can hold their breath for 7 hours? 7 hours. And they navigate thousands of miles across oceans to return to the exact beach where they were born. Scientists don't fully understand how they do it. Some kind of magnetic navigation built into their brains." Jerry was cleaning the same window he'd cleaned 3 times already, just to have an excuse to stay and talk. And the coolest part, baby sea turtles. When they hatch, they have to crawl all the way from their nest to the ocean. It's dangerous. Birds try to eat them, crabs try to catch them. The sand is burning hot under the sun. But they don't stop. They keep moving their little flippers, dragging themselves toward the water because they know that's where they belong. Jerry paused, letting the metaphor sink in. Then he added softly, "Sometimes, Captain, we all need to remember that we're meant to move. Even when it's hard, even when it's scary, we're meant to move." Dylan's hand moved. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his arm and pointed at Jerry. His thin finger extended toward the janitor who'd been talking to him for weeks. "Sea turtles," Dylan whispered. His voice was hoarse from disuse, barely audible, raspy like sandpaper. But he'd spoken. Jerry's heart stopped, then started again, racing. "That's right, buddy. Sea turtles." Evelyn's head snapped up from her computer so fast, Jerry heard her neck crack. Her eyes were wide, filled with shock and something else. Hope. Pure, desperate, overwhelming hope. "He spoke," she breathed. "Dylan spoke. Dylan, baby, you spoke." Dylan's eyes flickered to his mother, then back to Jerry. His hand was still pointing. Jerry knew this moment was fragile. He couldn't make a big deal of it, couldn't scare Dylan back into silence with too much enthusiasm. So he kept his voice calm, conversational. He knelt beside the wheelchair, bringing himself to Dylan's eye level. This close, he could see how thin the boy was, how pale. But his eyes, his green eyes, were alive for the first time since Jerry had seen him. "You know what else about sea turtles, Captain? Their legs aren't great for walking on land. They're made for swimming. But those turtles don't let that stop them. They use what they have to get where they need to go." Dylan's green eyes, so like his mother's, locked onto Jerry's face with an intensity that made Jerry's breath catch. "Can't walk," Dylan whispered. "Legs broken." Jerry shook his head slowly. "Your legs aren't broken, Captain. They're just sleeping, and with the right help they can wake up." "Nobody wants a broken kid," Dylan said, and the pain in those words was so raw, so deep, that Jerry felt tears burn his eyes. This wasn't just a child's belief. This was a wound carved by his own father's abandonment. "Who told you that?" Jerry asked gently, though he already knew. "Daddy left, because I'm broken." Jerry took a steadying breath. This wasn't just about physical therapy. This was about healing a shattered soul. And Jerry wasn't sure he was qualified for that. His own soul was still pretty shattered itself, but he couldn't walk away now. "Listen to me, Captain. I'm going to tell you a secret." Jerry glanced at Evelyn, who was watching with tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed over her mouth. "You're not broken. You're not defective. You're not worth less than anyone else. Your legs work differently, yes, but that doesn't make you broken. It makes you unique." Dylan's lower lip trembled. His eyes filled with tears that he blinked back furiously, as if crying would prove his brokenness. "Really?" The word was small, fragile, desperate. "Really? And you know what else? I used to help kids learn to use their legs. All kinds of legs. Walking legs, running legs, jumping legs. And I never once, not once, met a kid who was broken. Just kids who needed someone to believe in them. You helped kids walk." Dylan's voice was getting stronger, more engaged. He was leaning forward slightly in his wheelchair now. Jerry nodded, the admission painful but necessary. "I did. Before I came here to clean floors, I was a physical therapist. I helped kids just like you learn to use their legs." "Why did you stop?" The question hit Jerry like a physical blow. He closed his eyes briefly, seeing Monica's empty wheelchair, the bathroom door, the scene he'd never be able to unsee. Because someone I loved very much got hurt, and I couldn't fix her. And I thought that meant I couldn't fix anyone anymore. Dylan was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then, with the devastating insight that children sometimes possess, "Maybe you were wrong." Jerry stared at this child, this wounded, abandoned, remarkable child, who in his brokenness saw so clearly what Jerry had been blind to. "Maybe I was," Jerry whispered. Evelyn stood abruptly from her desk. "Mr. Campbell." "Jerry, can I speak with you outside?" In the hallway, Evelyn's composure cracked completely. The CEO who'd built a billion-dollar empire, who'd negotiated with world leaders, who'd faced down hostile boards, she crumbled like a child. Tears ran freely down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Her hands were shaking. Her breath came in gasps. "That's the first time he's spoken in 8 months," she said, her voice breaking on every word. 8 months. Do you understand? 8 months of silence. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on therapists, psychologists, specialists. Nothing. And you, a janitor, got him to talk in weeks. I'm not just a janitor, Jerry admitted quietly. His own secret felt heavy, shameful even. I was a pediatric physical therapist in Seattle, specialized in spinal cord injuries and neuromuscular conditions. I was pretty good at it, actually. Evelyn's eyes went wide. What? Then why are you mopping floors? Because I lost someone, and I lost myself in the process. I couldn't face helping children anymore. It hurt too much. But you've been helping my son. I couldn't not help him. I saw him, saw his pain, and something in me wouldn't let me walk away. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then, I'll pay you anything. Name your price. 100,000? 200? Name it, and it's yours. Just help my son walk again. Jerry shook his head. I'm not sure I can. You can. You already have. You've reached him in ways no one else could. Please, I'm begging you. Mrs. Harris, Evelyn. Call me Evelyn. Evelyn, I'm not licensed in California. I haven't practiced in over a year. I'm terrified of failing your son the way I failed my wife. What happened to your wife? Jerry told her. Everything. Monica's attack, her paralysis, her depression that he couldn't penetrate no matter how hard he tried, her suicide, his own collapse into grief and guilt, his retreat from his purpose, his belief that he'd never be able to help anyone again because he'd failed the person who mattered most. When he finished, Evelyn was crying openly, not the controlled tears of a CEO managing her emotions, but raw, sympathetic, understanding tears. Jerry, my son hasn't spoken in 8 months because he believes he's worthless. His father abandoned him because of his legs. Every therapist I've hired has been technically skilled but emotionally disconnected. They see his legs as a problem to solve, not him as a person to understand. Dylan doesn't need another expert. He needs someone who sees him, who understands pain, who won't give up on him. She grabbed his hands. Her fingers were cold, her grip desperate. You've already given him more hope in 6 weeks than hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of therapy gave him in 2 years. Please, help him. Jerry looked back at Evelyn's office, where Dylan was actually, for the first time in months, actively looking around the room instead of staring blankly out the window. He was touching his legs, as if seeing them for the first time. He thought of Monica, of her last days when she'd lost all hope. He thought of Lily, counting on him to be strong. He thought of the thousands of children he'd helped walk, run, jump, live. And he thought of this boy, abandoned, wounded, but not broken, who had spoken for the first time in 8 months because a janitor told him about sea turtles. Okay, Jerry said finally. I'll try, but I have conditions. Anything. This has to be unofficial. I'm not licensed here, so legally I can't practice. Officially, I'm still your janitor. Unofficially, I'll work with Dylan. Also, we go slowly. His psychological trauma is as significant as his physical condition. If we push too hard, we'll lose him completely. Agreed. And Evelyn, you need to be involved. Fully involved. Not just writing checks. This boy needs his mother to believe in him. He needs to see you believe he can do this. Evelyn's jaw tightened. I work 16-hour days, then work 14. Your son needs you more than this company needs you. No one spoke to Evelyn Harris that way. No one. Her employees would have been fired immediately for such presumption. But Jerry wasn't her employee. Not really. He was the man trying to save her son. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll be there. Good. We start Monday, after my shift ends. Come to the 4th floor conference room that's always empty. Bring Dylan. Monday, I'll be there. The first session was a disaster. Dylan, who had been so responsive in the office with Jerry's casual conversations, shut down completely when faced with formal therapy. The conference room, with its clinical sterility, Fluorescent lights, long table, rolling chairs, whiteboard, triggered memories of countless failed therapy sessions with specialists who'd poked and prodded and ultimately given up on him. "Not doing this," Dylan said, arms crossed, refusing to even attempt the simple exercises Jerry demonstrated. His voice was hard, defensive, the brief openness from Saturday completely gone. Jerry didn't push. Instead, he sat on the floor beside Dylan's wheelchair, putting himself below Dylan's eye level, a submissive position, non-threatening. "Fair enough. We won't do therapy then." Dylan's suspicion was palpable. He'd heard promises before. "Then what?" "We'll just talk, like before. Tell me about your favorite superhero." "Spider-Man," Dylan answered automatically, then realized he'd been tricked into engaging. Jerry laughed. "Spider-Man? Great choice. You know what I love about him? Before he got his powers, Peter Parker was just a regular kid who got picked on, kind of a loner, not the strongest or fastest." Dylan's interest was piqued despite himself. So, the thing that makes Spider-Man special isn't actually his powers, it's his heart. He chooses to help people, even when it's hard, even when no one appreciates him. The powers are cool, but the person underneath is what matters. "Daddy said I'm not special," Dylan muttered. "Your daddy was wrong," Jerry said firmly. "And sometimes daddies are wrong. Sometimes daddies are scared or hurt or too wrapped up in their own problems to see clearly. That doesn't make what they say true. But he left because of me." "No, Captain. He left because of himself. Because he was too weak to stay. That's not your fault. That's his failure as a father." Evelyn, sitting in the corner of the room observing, let out a choked sound. Jerry caught her eye and saw gratitude and pain mixed together. She'd probably wanted to say those words to Dylan, but didn't know how. "Dylan," Jerry continued, "I'm going to make you a promise. I'm not going to leave, and I'm not going to give up on you, even when it's hard, even when you're angry, even when you want to quit. I'll be here." "Why?" Dylan asked. "You're just the janitor," Jerry smiled. "Because you're worth it, because you're not broken, and because I need to help you as much as you need help. We're going to heal each other." Those words surprised Jerry as much as they surprised Dylan. He hadn't realized until he said them that they were true. Helping Dylan wasn't just about the boy's recovery, it was about Jerry's too. Over the following weeks, Jerry worked with Dylan daily after his janitor shift ended. He started not with physical therapy, but with trust building. They talked about everything: superheroes, ocean creatures, space exploration, Lily and her silly jokes, what kind of pizza was best, whether dogs or cats made better pets. Jerry brought facts and stories, weaving them with subtle lessons about resilience and hope. Dylan gradually opened up, sharing his own thoughts, his own interests, his own fears. Evelyn kept her promise, arriving every evening to participate. At first, Dylan was suspicious of her sudden presence, wondering if it would last. How long before she went back to 16-hour days? How long before her company needed her more than he did? But night after night, his mother showed up. She sat on the floor with them, listened to Jerry's stories, laughed at his jokes, and slowly, carefully, Dylan began to let her in again. "Mum, did you know octopuses have 3 hearts?" Dylan asked one evening. Evelyn's smile could have lit the entire building. "I didn't, sweetheart. Tell me more." It was the first time in months Dylan had initiated conversation with her. Small victory, maybe, but victories were measured differently now. After 3 weeks of trust building, Jerry introduced the first physical exercise. "Okay, Captain, we're going to play a game called Wake Up Legs. I'm going to gently touch different parts of your legs, and you tell me if you can feel it. No wrong answers, no judgment, just information." Dylan looked nervous but nodded. Jerry started with the feet, gently pressing his thumb into Dylan's arch. His therapist instincts came flooding back. The careful pressure, the observation of micro-reactions, the patience. "Feel that?" "A little, like pressure. Far away. Perfect. That means the nerves are there. Just sleepy. Let's wake them up." They spent 20 minutes on simple sensory exercises. Jerry's expert hands could feel the muscle tension, the potential, the possibility that had been overlooked by therapists who'd given up too quickly or pushed too hard. Dylan's legs weren't paralyzed, they were dormant. Years of disuse combined with psychological trauma had created a disconnect between brain and limb. "You're doing amazing, Dylan," Jerry said genuinely. Dylan's face lit up. "Really? Really? Your legs are stronger than you think. They've just been resting, waiting for you to believe in them." Evelyn watched from her chair, silent tears tracking down her face. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope, real hope, not the desperate grasping for solutions that had defined the past years. Genuine belief that her son might be okay. Weeks turned into months. Every evening, Jerry and Dylan worked together while Evelyn participated. The progress was slow but steady, measured in millimeters and micro-movements. First, Dylan regained sensation throughout his legs, patchy at first, then increasingly consistent. Jerry would test different areas, and Dylan would report what he felt: tingling, pressure, warmth. Then, small movements. A toe wiggle that made Dylan shriek with excitement. His big toe moved up and down, barely perceptible to anyone but Jerry, but it was movement. "I did it. Did you see that?" Dylan's face was pure joy. "I saw it, Captain. Your toe just took its first step." A foot flex that had Evelyn sobbing openly. Dylan's foot pointed, then flexed, the muscles firing after years of dormancy. Then, with Jerry's support, Dylan could hold his own weight for seconds at a time. Jerry would help him stand, supporting most of his weight at first, then gradually letting Dylan take more and more. 10 seconds, Jerry counted as Dylan stood with assistance, his thin legs trembling with effort. "That's a new record, Captain." Dylan was sweating, exhausted, but grinning ear to ear. 10 whole seconds. "Tomorrow we'll try for 15. "Tomorrow? Can't we do it now?" Jerry laughed. "Rest is part of training. Even Spider-Man takes breaks." As Dylan progressed physically, his psychological healing was equally remarkable. He started talking more, laughing more, engaging with the world. The silence that had defined him for 8 months was replaced by questions, observations, jokes. He asked about Jerry's daughter Lily, and eventually met her on a Saturday when Jerry brought her to work. Lily, now 7, was immediately fascinated by Dylan. She'd heard her dad talk about Captain and was eager to meet this boy who'd gotten her father excited about therapy again. "Hi, I'm Lily. My dad says you're really brave." Dylan blushed. "I'm not brave." "Yes, you are. Dad says the bravest thing anyone can do is keep trying even when it's hard, and you're trying really hard." Dylan looked at Jerry, who winked at him. "Maybe I'm a little brave," Dylan admitted. Lily beamed. "Want to be friends?" "I don't have many friends here yet. California is different from Seattle." "I don't have any friends," Dylan said quietly. "Well, now you have me. Friends." She stuck out her small hand with the solemnity of a business deal. Dylan shook it. "Friends." Evelyn watched the interaction with a full heart. This janitor, this remarkable man, had not only brought her son back from the edge of despair, but was rebuilding her entire world. She was falling in love with him. The realization hit her during one of their evening sessions. Jerry was demonstrating an exercise to Dylan, his gentle hands guiding the boy's legs with such care, such patience, such love. His brown eyes crinkled when he smiled, and his laugh, warm and genuine, made Evelyn's heart skip beats. It had no business skipping. She'd spent years with Eugene, who'd been cold, calculating, and ultimately cruel. Jerry was everything Eugene wasn't: compassionate, devoted, present. He showed up every single day, never complained, never asked for anything. He'd taken a janitor job just to support his daughter, his ego apparently non-existent when it came to providing for his child. He'd sacrificed his prestigious career because grief had broken him, because he was human enough to fall apart when love was lost. And now he was healing himself by healing her son. but Evelyn couldn't act on her feelings. He was her employee, officially anyway. She was his boss. The power imbalance was too significant, too potentially exploitative. More importantly, she couldn't risk disrupting Dylan's progress. If things went wrong between her and Jerry, would he leave? Would Dylan lose his therapist, his friend, his anchor? So Evelyn buried her feelings deep and focused on her son, but she couldn't hide the way she looked at Jerry, and Jerry noticed. Their first kiss happened accidentally, 6 months into Dylan's therapy, after a particularly breakthrough session where Dylan had taken 3 independent steps, actual steps, 1 foot in front of the other, balance maintained, weight fully supported. Jerry and Evelyn were cleaning up the conference room. Dylan was in the hallway, FaceTiming with Lily about something important to 7-year-olds. Their laughter echoed through the corridor. "He took 3 steps," Evelyn said, her voice filled with wonder. "My son took 3 steps." "He did," Jerry agreed, pride swelling in his chest. "He's incredible." "You're incredible," Evelyn corrected, turning to face him. "You've given him something no amount of money could buy. Hope, belief, a reason to try." Jerry shook his head. He had it in him all along. He just needed someone to show him how to find it. Evelyn stepped closer. The distance between them suddenly felt charged, electric. "You're too modest, and you're too beautiful when you're happy," Jerry blurted out, then immediately looked horrified. His face flushed red. "I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. You're my employer. I shouldn't." Evelyn kissed him. It was soft, brief, and absolutely electric. Her lips pressed against his for maybe 3 seconds, but those seconds stretched into eternity. When she pulled back, both of them were breathing harder. Jerry's eyes were wide, surprised. Evelyn's were determined. "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered. "I shouldn't have. I've wanted you to do that for months," Jerry admitted. They stared at each other, the confession hanging between them like a bridge being built. "This is complicated," Evelyn said finally. "Very complicated. You're my janitor, officially. And unofficially, I'm your son's therapist. Also complicated. Dylan adores you. I adore him and you." Evelyn's breath caught. "Jerry, I know. We should be smart about this. We should wait. We should think about Dylan's progress and professional boundaries and—" Evelyn kissed him again. This time, he kissed her back with equal fervor. His hands came up to cup her face, her fingers wound into his shirt, and for a moment, nothing else existed. They were still kissing when Dylan wheeled himself back into the room. "Mom! Mr. Jerry! Are you kissing?" They jumped apart like teenagers caught by parents. Dylan was grinning hugely, his smile bigger than they'd ever seen. "Does this mean Mr. Jerry is going to be my dad?" Jerry knelt beside Dylan's wheelchair, trying to compose himself. "Buddy, it's not that simple." "I want you to be my dad," Dylan said earnestly. "My real dad left because he didn't want me. But you never left. You believe in me. You help me walk. That's what dads should do, right?" Jerry's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Evelyn, whose face was wet with her own tears. "How about we start with me being your friend who really, really cares about you?" Jerry suggested. "And we'll figure out the rest as we go." Dylan considered this. "Okay, but you have to marry Mom. I've decided." Evelyn laughed through her tears. "Oh, have you decided?" "Yes, I like having Mr. Jerry here, and Lily. We're a good team." Jerry stood, still holding Dylan's hand. He looked at Evelyn. "Your son makes excellent points." "Don't encourage him," Evelyn said, but she was smiling. "Too late. He's already my favorite person, after Lily. And maybe you." "Maybe me?" "Definitely you." Dylan groaned theatrically. "Are you going to kiss again? Because I want to practice walking more." They all laughed, and in that moment, something shifted. They weren't just therapist and patient, employer and employee, parent and son. They were becoming a family. Evelyn and Jerry took their relationship slowly. At least, they tried to. They kept their romantic involvement private at first, aware of the complications. Jerry was still technically her employee. He was still unofficially treating her son. The potential for scandal was significant. Billionaire CEO dating her janitor would make quite the headline. But secrets don't keep well when children are involved. Lily figured it out immediately. "Daddy, are you in love with Dylan's mom?" "What makes you ask that?" "Because you smile all the time now. And you said her name 3 times while we were eating dinner. And you're humming." "You never hum." Jerry laughed. "You're very observant, baby girl." "So are you?" "Yes, I think I am." Lily squealed with delight. "Does that mean Dylan could be my brother?" "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." "Too late. I already told him we're going to be siblings." Jerry groaned. These kids were going to orchestrate their parents' relationship, whether the adults wanted them to or not. Dylan's progress accelerated with the added motivation of happiness. Within a year of starting therapy with Jerry, he was walking with a cane. Not perfectly. His gait was uneven, his balance still developing, but he was walking. Actually walking. 1 foot in front of the other, covering ground, moving through space under his own power. His first real walk across the conference room was documented on Evelyn's phone. Dylan, holding his cane, face screwed up in concentration, made it from one end to the other. 15 meters that might as well have been a marathon. Jerry and Evelyn cheered so loudly that security came to check on them. "I did it!" Dylan shouted. "I walked by myself! Mom, did you see?" "I saw, sweetheart. I saw everything." Evelyn swept him into a hug, tears flowing freely. Jerry joined the embrace. "Told you, Captain. Not broken. Just needed to wake up." Or, when Dylan returned to school that fall, a private school that Evelyn's money paid for but Dylan's courage earned, his classmates didn't know what to make of the boy who'd been wheelchair-bound when he left, now walking with a cane. "Dylan can walk?" one classmate asked incredulously. "Yeah," Dylan said proudly. "My friend Jerry taught me how." "Who's Jerry?" Dylan grinned. "He's a janitor and a superhero." The story of the janitor who helped the billionaire's son walk made its way through the school parent network. Some parents were skeptical, some were curious, some wanted Jerry's contact information for their own children with difficulties. Evelyn, fiercely protective, kept Jerry's identity private. "He's not taking clients," she'd say. "He's my son's therapist, and that's enough." But internally, she knew Jerry was healing too. With every step Dylan took, Jerry's grief lightened. With every breakthrough, Jerry's confidence returned. He was finding his way back to his purpose through her son, and she was falling deeper in love with him every day. The first public appearance of their relationship was at Dylan's school play, a production of The Wizard of Oz, where Dylan played the Cowardly Lion. Jerry and Lily sat with Evelyn in the front row, looking every bit the family they were becoming. Other parents noticed. Whispers circulated. "Is that the janitor? He's with Evelyn Harris. The Evelyn Harris. How did they meet?" Jerry felt self-conscious in his simple button-down shirt next to Evelyn's designer dress. But when she reached over and took his hand, squeezing it tightly as Dylan delivered his lines on stage, he didn't care what anyone thought. "I do believe in me," Dylan said as the Cowardly Lion. "I do believe in me." The audience laughed at the adapted line, but Jerry and Evelyn knew the real meaning. Their son, because Dylan was theirs now, both of theirs, had finally learned to believe in himself. After the play, Dylan actually ran, cane and all, to them. "Did you see? I remembered all my lines." "You were amazing," Lily squealed. "The best lion ever." "Best lion in any universe," Jerry agreed. Dylan hugged Jerry tightly. "Thank you for helping me be brave." "You were always brave, Captain. You just needed to remember it." That night, after putting both children to bed at Evelyn's house, Jerry and Evelyn sat on her patio, drinking wine and watching the Los Angeles skyline glitter like a carpet of stars. "Move in with us," Evelyn said suddenly. Jerry nearly choked on his wine. "What? You and Lily? Move in. This house is too big for just Dylan and me, and honestly, you're here most evenings anyway. The kids are best friends. We're—" She trailed off. "We're what?" "A family. We're a family, Jerry. We just haven't made it official yet." "Evelyn, I'm a janitor. You're a billionaire CEO. People will talk. Let them talk. I've spent my entire life caring about what people think. And where did it get me? A failed marriage to a man who abandoned his child. An empire I built but can't enjoy because I'm too busy impressing people who don't matter. She turned to face him. You matter. Dylan matters. Lily matters. This, us, matters. The rest is noise. Jerry was quiet for a long moment. My daughter adores it here, and Dylan adores her. They're already siblings in every way that counts. I don't have money. I can't contribute to... Jerry Campbell, if you finish that sentence, I will push you into that pool. Evelyn's voice was fierce. You've given my son his legs back. You've given me my son back. You've given me hope and love, and a reason to come home instead of staying at the office until midnight. You've given everything. I don't need your money. I need you. Jerry's eyes were wet. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything, even founding my company. He kissed her softly. Then yes, we'll move in. Evelyn's smile could have illuminated the entire city. Really? Really? On one condition. Anything. I want to get my California therapy license. I want to officially help Dylan, and maybe eventually other kids like him. I've been hiding from my purpose for too long. Evelyn threw her arms around him. Yes, absolutely yes. I'll pay for everything. Schooling, licensing fees, whatever you need. I'll pay you back. You already have, 1,000 times over. They moved in the following month. Lily and Dylan were ecstatic, immediately claiming rooms near each other so they could have sibling sleepovers. The massive house that had felt empty and cold suddenly felt warm and alive. Jerry resigned from his janitor position, but not before his co-workers threw him a small party. Never saw a janitor become a CEO's boyfriend, Roberto joked. But if anyone deserves it, Jerry, it's you. I'm not becoming her boyfriend because she's a CEO, Jerry corrected. I'm with her because she's an incredible mother and an amazing woman. The billions are just a side effect. Everyone laughed, but they knew Jerry meant it. 2 years after that first Saturday, when Jerry had noticed a wounded boy in a wheelchair, life had transformed for everyone. Dylan, now 10, walked with a slight limp, but no longer needed his cane. His physical therapy continued, but now it was part of his routine, not a constant battle. He was thriving in school, had friends, and had just joined the swim team, where his legs, still rebuilding strength, benefited from the low-impact exercise. "Dad, watch this!" he'd call to Jerry at practices, using the title naturally now. Jerry would watch, heart full, as his son, because Dylan was his son in every way that mattered, executed strokes that would have been impossible 2 years ago. Lily had embraced her role as big sister with fierce determination. She helped Dylan with homework, defended him against any playground bullies, and celebrated every milestone like it was Christmas. "My brother's going to be in the Olympics," she'd announced to anyone who would listen. "He's going to be a swimmer, the fastest one ever." Dylan would roll his eyes, but secretly loved her unwavering belief in him. Jerry had gotten his California physical therapy license and opened a small practice specializing in pediatric patients with spinal cord injuries and neuromuscular conditions. He only took a few patients at a time, determined to give each child the intensive, personalized attention Dylan had needed. His practice had a year-long waiting list within months. "You're changing lives," Evelyn told him one evening as they reviewed applications from families desperate for Jerry's help. "We're changing lives," he corrected. "None of this would have happened without you, without Dylan." Evelyn had stepped back from some of her CEO duties, promoting a capable COO and becoming Chief Innovation Officer instead. She still worked hard, but her hours were reasonable, and she was home for dinner every night. "I almost missed my son's childhood," she'd explained to her board. "I won't make that mistake with the rest of it." Their wedding was small, intimate, held in their backyard garden with only close friends and family present. Dylan was Jerry's best man. Lily was Evelyn's flower girl. During the ceremony, when the officiant asked if anyone objected, Dylan raised his hand. "I don't object," he said quickly as everyone held their breath. I just want to say something. The officiant smiled. Go ahead. Dylan stood on his own 2 feet, and addressed the small gathering. When my real dad left, I thought I was broken. I thought no one would ever want me because my legs didn't work right. I stopped talking. I stopped trying. I stopped believing I was worth anything. His voice was steady, clear, confident. Nothing like the silent, withdrawn boy he'd been. Then Jerry came. He wasn't a therapist then. He was just a janitor who told me stories about sea turtles. He didn't care that I couldn't walk. He saw me anyway. He believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Dylan looked at Jerry, who was openly crying. Jerry taught me that broken things can be fixed, that people can wake up, even after they've been sleeping for a long time. That love isn't about perfect legs or perfect bodies or perfect anything. It's about showing up, every day, no matter what. He turned to his mother. Mom, you're marrying the best man I know. And Jerry, you're getting the best mom in the world. You both deserve each other. Then, with his characteristic bluntness, now you should kiss so we can eat cake. I'm hungry. Everyone laughed through their tears. Jerry and Evelyn kissed, long, tender, full of promise, while their children cheered. Finally, Lily shouted. Now we're officially a family. Dylan high-fived her. Best day ever. It was. 3 years after the wedding, life had settled into a beautiful rhythm of controlled chaos. Dylan, now 13, was a competitive swimmer with medals covering his bedroom wall. His legs, while not perfect, were strong enough for him to walk, run, and swim with confidence. His physical therapists, not Jerry, who'd handed him off to colleagues to maintain appropriate boundaries, were amazed by his progress. There's no medical explanation for this level of recovery, one specialist said. Transverse myelitis cases this severe don't typically regain this much function. But Jerry knew the truth. Dylan's recovery wasn't just about physical therapy. It was about love, belief, and purpose. It was about a janitor who saw a broken boy and refused to look away. Lily, now 12, was Dylan's biggest cheerleader at every swim meet. Their sibling bond was unbreakable, forged in the fires of both their traumas and tempered by their shared healing. Jerry's practice had expanded into a full clinic with 3 other therapists he'd trained personally. They called it Walking Miracles Pediatric Rehabilitation. Cheesy, yes, but accurate. Every child who comes through our doors is not broken, Jerry would tell his staff. They're just waiting for someone to believe in them. Evelyn had found the balance she'd always sought. Harris Technologies continued to thrive under her guidance, but she'd learned that her worth wasn't measured in quarterly earnings or market share. Her worth was measured in dinners shared, homework helped with, bedtime stories told, and moments cherished. One evening, sitting on their patio, where it had all been decided years ago, Jerry and Evelyn watched Dylan and Lily playing in the pool, splashing, laughing, being kids. "Remember when we first saw each other?" Evelyn asked. "You barely looked at me. I was just the janitor. You were never just the janitor. I noticed you from the beginning, the way you cleaned, so methodical, so careful. I just didn't understand what I was seeing." "And what were you seeing?" "A man with a healer's hands trying to hide from his purpose." Jerry was quiet for a moment. "If I hadn't noticed Dylan through your office door—" "Don't think about it," Evelyn said quickly. "Don't think about the what-ifs. We're here now. That's what matters. Here is pretty amazing. Here is everything." Dylan pulled himself out of the pool with ease, water streaming off his strong legs that had once been useless, that his biological father had called broken, that had kept him prisoner in a wheelchair. "Dad, Mom, did you see that flip turn? Coach says it's Olympic level." "We saw," they called together. "And Mom, I was thinking, can we get a dog? Lily and I want a golden retriever. They're the best swimming dogs." Evelyn looked at Jerry. "What do you think?" "I think we should let the kids decide." "Really?" Dylan's eyes went wide. "Really? You've earned the right to make good decisions." Dylan whooped and cannonballed back into the pool, splashing Lily, who shrieked in mock outrage. Jerry pulled Evelyn close. "Thank you," he whispered. For what? For bringing me back to life, for letting me help Dylan, for loving Lily, for this family, for everything. Evelyn kissed him softly. Thank you for seeing my son when I was too blind with grief to see him myself, for saving him, for saving me. We saved each other, Jerry corrected. All of us. Dylan saved me by letting me help him. Lily saved Dylan by believing in him unconditionally. You saved me by taking a chance on your janitor. You were never just my janitor. I know, but I like the story. Billionaire CEO falls for humble janitor. It's very cinematic. Evelyn laughed. You're ridiculous. You love it. I love you. I love you too. All of you. This whole messy, beautiful, perfectly imperfect family. In the pool, Dylan was teaching Lily a complicated swimming stroke, patient and gentle, the same way Jerry had taught him to walk. The student had become the teacher. He's going to be okay, Jerry said, watching his son. He already is, Evelyn replied. Because of you. Because of us. Because of all of us. They sat together as the sun set over Los Angeles, watching their children play, listening to their laughter echo across the yard. 5 years ago, Jerry had been a broken man mopping floors. Dylan had been a silent boy in a wheelchair. Evelyn had been a workaholic hiding from her failures, and Lily had been a grieving child. Now they were whole, not perfect, never perfect, but whole. A family built not from blood, but from choice, from struggle, from belief, from love. Dylan pulled himself out of the pool one final time, walked over to his parents, and hugged them both simultaneously. Best family ever, he declared. Agreed, Lily added, appearing beside them, dripping wet but beaming. Jerry and Evelyn looked at each other over their children's heads, love and gratitude shining in both their eyes. Best family ever, they agreed in unison. And in that moment, surrounded by their children, healed from their past traumas and looking forward to their shared future, everything was exactly as it should be. Everything was perfect. Not because life had become easy, not because the struggles were over, but because they faced everything together, a team, a unit, a family forged in fire and strengthened by love. The janitor, the CEO, and their miracle children. The most unlikely family, the most perfect family, forever.